Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, and hello everybody. It's a true pleasure to be here today with you all. My name is Ken Himmelman, and I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Public Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School here in Boston, Massachusetts. I am very honored, I'll say a little more about myself shortly, but it really is an honor to be here with my distinguished panelists and to be facilitating a discussion with them about this idea of proximate leadership. We're joined today by 2 distinguished local officials, one from Senegal and one from Rwanda. And then from 2 leaders of organizations that are sponsoring today's session. From Tostan, we have Elena Bonametti, and from Water for People, we have Eleanor Allen. And both organizations, as you'll note from their wonderful backgrounds, are celebrating their 30th year in operation, which is really quite an achievement, quite remarkable. So congratulations to both of you and to your great organizations. I will hand it over to you to kind of introduce what we're doing here today, and then I'll pick back up on the other side.
Thank you so much, Ken. Merci beaucoup. Welcome everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à la session d'aujourd'hui. Eleanor et moi-même, nous avons le plaisir d'ouvrir un peu la session et redonner après la parole à nos invités. Donc, we have the pleasure with Eleanor today to introduce the session, and then we will hand it over to our distinguished guest. So first of all, let's say that we are so proud and so energized by this Catalyzing Change Week. So Eleanor and I represent organizations that have been working over the past year, as you have seen from the video, to bring about change and more systemic change through this movement, Catalyst 2030. So we are very proud representative of this movement. And today we thought that bringing proximate leadership to the front of the conversation was indeed honor this effort, because actually proximate leadership is for us at the center of the acceleration towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Donc, tout d'abord, juste pour dire que nous sommes tellement enthousiastes d'arriver à la fin de cette semaine de Catalyzing Change Week avec Catalyst 2030, qui est un mouvement que Water for People et Tostan, les organisations que moi et Eleanor représentons, ont fondé il y a un an. Et nous avons cheminé cette année pour vraiment insuffler une dynamique positive pour un changement systémique. Et nous pensons que la leadership locale, bien sûr, joue un rôle fondamental dans l'atteinte des objectifs durables du millénaire. Donc, du développement durable, pardon. Donc, c'est pour cela que nous menons cette session aujourd'hui et c'est pour cela que ce travail aussi au cœur du travail de notre organisation. Donc, laissez-moi parler juste une minute par rapport à ce que nous faisons à Tostan en termes de leadership local. Nous sommes là, en fait, et nous existons aujourd'hui, après 30 ans, comme Ken l'a dit, justement parce que nous avons accompagné des leaders locaux à mener et à dessiner et à mener le développement comme eux, ils le souhaitent. Et nous existons aujourd'hui et nous avons assisté vraiment à l'émergence de plus de 30 000 leaders féminins et bien sûr et masculins aussi, comme les maires d'aujourd'hui, pour qu'eux, ils puissent vraiment accélérer le développement, leur bien-être, le bien-être de leur communauté vers vraiment les objectifs qui se sont atteints. Look, let me just say a few words from Tostan perspective, why proximate leadership is so central for us today. And actually we are here today after 30 years, as Ken said, just celebrating actually this proximate leadership. At Tostan, we have been partnering with communities at the grassroots really to define and fulfill their vision of well-being. And so, and really to inspire large movements that have led to dignity, to more dignity for all, for their communities, and also for the respect of human rights. And those leaders, and we have seen more than 30,000 of this, coming really to the front to really advocate for allocation of resources and for really the achievement of their vision, of the vision of well-being of their communities. And so this topic is so central to us, and I'm sure it is, Eleanor feels the same thing in regards with the work that Water for People has done over the years, over 30 years. So Eleanor, over to you. Why are you coming to this conversation today? What is Water for People perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Elena. We've been friends for a while, so we share stories and compare notes and help each other navigate the complexities of our work. So Water for People over 30 years has evolved quite a bit. We are focused on bringing water access and sanitation access, as well as sustainable services. So we work in East Africa, Latin America, and India. The model changes depending on the concept, but the goal is the same. So people don't have to worry about where they're going to get their water or go to the bathroom, and their quality of life is improved in health, ability to work and go to school and earn a living for their family. So in this specific session today, what I wanted to focus on is how we evolved from doing small projects for 20 years to what we've done for the last 10 years, which is really focused on bringing services to an entire district, absolutely together with local government. And in this case, and in almost all cases, it begins with the mayor. So the case study we'll share today is about the Rulindo district in Rwanda. It's a district of about 300,000 people. And in 2010, the idea of Mayor Justice, he's no longer the mayor, but former Mayor Justice, we'll call him Mayor Justice for today, had this idea, like, let's do the whole district instead of doing a project here and project there. And people thought we were crazy. That wasn't possible, especially in Rwanda with all the changes in topography. How could we even do that? And so it became known as the Rulindo Challenge. And here we are 10 years later, celebrating that the completion of the Rulindo Challenge. Everyone has water services, and we've replicated the model across our 9 countries around the world, and we're continuing to add districts in Rwanda as well. So you'll hear more about the challenges, the vision, and then the challenges that came along with that, just really changing the system in which we work and having using government as well as our organization to really test the envelope and what we could do differently to change the way water's delivered. So I'll pass to you, Elena, to do the French, and then pass back to you to introduce the mayors.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. We can't wait to hear more. So let me go introduce the 4 really important voices in this conversation today. And so let me start by the first 2 ones, of course, that you already introduced. So we have Mayor Khalidou Sy of Médina Yoro Foulah in Senegal, where Tostan has worked for so many years now. We have been in Senegal for 30 years. We were founded in Senegal, and Khalidou has been really a role model for so many mayors in Senegal. And of course, Mayor Justice Kangwagye, that you just introduced from Rulindo district in Rwanda. Donc, nous sommes très heureux aujourd'hui d'accueillir donc les 4 protagonistes dans cette conversation. Donc, je commence par les 2 premiers. Le maire Khalid-Oussi de Médina Yoro-Foulah au Sénégal, avec lequel vraiment Tostan a beaucoup collaboré, qui est devenu un exemple au niveau national pour ce qu'il a fait dans sa commune. Et l'ancien maire Justus Kangwagie du district de Rulindo au Rwanda. Et Eleanor vient de présenter un peu ce qu'ils appellent le challenge, le défi de Rulindo, qui est en fait vraiment un projet très ambitieux que Water for People et Mayor Justus ont mis ensemble, ont travaillé pendant 10 ans et c'est devenu vraiment une best practice, une pratique vraiment que Water for People a répliqué dans d'autres pays. Et donc, nous allons entendre un peu plus par rapport à ce défi plus tard. Maintenant, le troisième protagoniste de cette conversation, en fait, c'est vous. Hein? The third voice, the third important voice in this conversation is you, actually, because we really want this to be a conversation. So we really want to engage with you, the audience, today. And so I would like to invite you to put your name, your location, and your organization that you represent today. So like, you know, I haven't done at the beginning. So my name is Elena Bonometi. I'm based in Dakar in Senegal. So I call from West Africa. And you have understood I'm the CEO of Tostan. So just add one sentence. Which question, which passion, which idea brings you to this session today? Please, we want to hear from you. You are the third important voice on the conversation. So, nous voulons vraiment engager aujourd'hui, nous engager avec le public. Hein? Donc, l'audience est très importante aujourd'hui. C'est pour cela qu'on fait l'effort de traduire en français et en anglais, parce que nous voulons que vous soyez là avec nous. Donc, s'il vous plaît, mettez votre nom, votre lieu de résidence et l'organisation pour laquelle vous travaillez ou qui vous représentez aujourd'hui. Et mettez aussi une phrase qui explique qu'est-ce qui vous amène à cette conversation aujourd'hui. C'est une question, c'est une passion, c'est une idée. S'il vous plaît, indiquez-la dans la chat. Hein? Donc, il y a 2 collègues qui sont en train de modérer la chat en anglais et en français. Donc, s'il vous plaît, nous attendons vraiment vos questions et vos réactions. Hein? So, do please participate in the chat. There will be a lot of time for discussion. So, please, we look forward to your question and ideas. Hein? So, just before handing it over to Ken to dive deep, just a brief logistical note. As you have understood, today we are in a bilingual session. And bilingual live. It's a challenge, but we love challenges at Catalyst 2030. So we are very excited about this. So there might be some moments where we will work on it in English, and we really ask for your understanding as it is a little bit challenging to coordinate both the languages and the connectivity. So please bear with us, but please do participate if you are a French speaker audience. Donc, une petite note logistique avant qu'on commence vraiment dans le plus sérieux. Donc, la session, comme vous avez compris, est bilingue et on le fait en direct. Hein? Donc, on sait que c'est un challenge, mais nous aimons vraiment les challenges à Catalyst 2030. Donc, nous voulions que ce soit une conversation et donc, nous allons le faire d'une façon conversationnelle. Hein? Donc, il se peut qu'à certains moments, nous travaillons qu'en anglais. Donc, je vous demande vraiment d'être un peu compréhensif et d'essayer de jouer le jeu. Hein? Donc, utilisez la chat au plus tôt possible en français, au maximum possible en français. Et si vous souhaitez poser une question en français, sentez-vous de le faire parce qu'il y a un modérateur français, francophone, dans la chat. Voilà, now, last but not least, the fourth voice. Donc ça, c'est le dernier, mais pas le moindre, le 4e. Donc, thank you, Ken, for being with us. It's such an honor to have you. We are so lucky to have you as a facilitator. So you already introduced yourself. I just want to add that you don't only bring your academic perspective, but also a long history working in social change, in global health for some leading organizations in the sector like Partners in Health and Health Leads. And you worked so much in Rwanda. You just shared your passion at the beginning of the session with us. So thank you for being with us. It's really a truly honor to have you. So merci Ken. Donc toi, tu es la 4e voix importante de la conversation. Nous avons beaucoup de chance de t'avoir aujourd'hui, non seulement pour ton background académique, mais aussi pour ta longue histoire de travail dans le domaine vraiment du changement social et de la santé publique, pour des organisations, bien sûr, qui sont vraiment prééminentes dans ce secteur, Partners in Health, Health Leads, et vraiment, nous sommes très heureux de t'avoir aujourd'hui. Et avant de te céder la parole, maintenant, c'est le time de un petit poll. It's a poll time. Donc, en français d'abord. Veuillez imaginer une communauté qui vous tient à cœur. Est un problème auquel cette communauté est confrontée. Quel serait le rôle du leadership local pour relever ces défis? Donc, en anglais. Think of a challenge facing a community you care about. What will be the role of local leadership in addressing the need? Please take the poll while I'll hand over the floor to Ken. Donc, pendant que je donne la parole à Ken pour la session, prenez le temps de faire le poll et je suis sûre que voilà, vos insights, vos avis vont être utiles à la conversation. So, over to you, Ken. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup, Ken, et merci encore pour votre écoute.
Thank you, Elena. It's very interesting to see the results coming in, and not really that surprising that almost everybody thinks that local leadership would be the central driving force in addressing and sustaining change. So certainly we're talking to people of like minds here with us today. So that's really terrific. Yeah, I'm not sure that number is going to change a lot at this point. So that's great. So let me just say a little word more about myself, just to give you a bit of context. I am as I said, I'm the executive director at the Center for Public Leadership. And the Center for Public Leadership is a research center at the Harvard Kennedy School that was started 20 years ago. So not quite as old as Toast on and Water for People, but, you know, we do our best. And, you know, the thing that we really focus on is how to prepare a next generation of what we refer to as public leaders. So leaders, not just in the public sector, but also in the private and nonprofit sectors who have the skills and the dispositions and the capacities to take on these big, complex, what we call adaptive problems that by their very nature require collaboration and teamwork, and importantly, I think engagement at the local level. And what's interesting to me, as Elena mentioned, you know, my personal background is really coming from the social sector, having worked at Partners in Health and at Health Leads on health equity issues, both globally and domestically here in the US. You know, you just see over and over again the profound truth of the critical role that local leadership plays, that grassroots leadership plays in solving problems. And the disconnect also between the way in which I think sometimes national and global actors tend to approach these large-scale problems, which they often see as technical in nature and that are often driven by solutions that are designed outside of communities and then superimposed on those communities. And I just, at the implementation level, saw over and over again the failure of a lot of those interventions to take root. Whereas I think some of the approaches that we're going to hear more about today, when they really engaged at the community level, you know, were transformed by that engagement. And so at the Center for Public Leadership, we're trying to think about how does a place like Harvard actually incorporate those voices of expertise that come from communities that maybe don't normally find a foothold at elite institutions, but really need to if our students are going to learn what it takes to solve this set of problems that we face collectively. So we're going to start with some structured questions we have for our two mayors about this idea of proximate leadership and how to engage locally. Both of these mayors are in their own right, as I said at the outset, very distinguished, have received awards and recognition for their outstanding efforts. So we'll first hear from Mayor Khalidousi, and we're going to do it by video recording because of some wanting to make sure we didn't let the internet interfere. So we'll run through his answers to some questions, and then I'll pose the same set of questions to Mayor Justice. And then our hope is to open it up to all of you, as Elena said, and invite you into the conversation. So maybe we can start with the first set of questions from Mayor Khalidousi.
Je suis Khalidousi, maire de la commune de Médine Yoro Fula. Nous avons, depuis 2014, été élus comme conseiller d'abord, et ensuite j'ai été élu par le conseiller, c'est-à-dire les conseillers m'ont élu comme maire. nous avons au niveau de Médine Yoro Foulah beaucoup de priorités. Compte tenu de l'ensemble des priorités qui sont là, la population de Médine Yoro Foulah, connaissant mon engagement dans le cadre du développement à travers mes activités de Tostan, tout le monde a jugé nécessaire de me mettre à la tête de la mairie de Médine Yoro Foulah pour permettre quand même d'accompagner la population à atteindre les résultats. C'est dans ce cadre-là que j'ai accepté en tout cas la demande de la population et j'ai décidé vraiment d'être maire de Médine Yoro Foulah en vue de les accompagner dans le cadre du développement économique et social de Médine Yoro Foulah.
Donc, Monsieur le maire, la première question est par rapport au leadership local. Le leadership local consiste à être réactif, à répondre aux exigences des citoyens. Pouvez-vous nous indiquer quels sont, selon vous, les outils et les approches les plus efficaces que vous avez utilisés pour soutenir les priorités et les aspirations locales?
Dans le souci de soutenir les priorités et aspirations des populations, nous avons utilisé une approche participative, inclusive et respectueuse des droits humains, associée d'une planification stratégique quinquennale qui prend en compte la vision d'avenir des populations. Ainsi, nous avons encouragé la participation des populations dans le processus de prise de décision, la formation et l'information des citoyens pour leur permettre de bien connaître leurs droits et leurs devoirs. La promotion de mécanismes et d'outils adaptés permettant aux citoyens de suivre et contrôler le travail des élus et à ces derniers de rendre compte de leurs décisions. C'est dans ce cadre que nous avons adopté l'élaboration du budget participatif qui a pour but de permettre à tous les citoyens de définir eux-mêmes leurs priorités et inciter à la participation citoyenne. Le budget participatif favorise un développement solidaire et participatif, une plus grande confiance et collaboration avec la population. La transparence, la prise en charge des priorités des populations, y compris les enfants et les femmes, parce qu'il faut impérativement que les femmes soient impliquées dans le processus. Le budget élaboré, mis en œuvre, suivi et évalué par la population. Ce sont ces approches et outils qui ont été utilisés pour soutenir les priorités des populations. Voilà.
On voit très bien que vous êtes vraiment leader chez vous et nous sommes aujourd'hui réunis pour justement discuter de cette leadership qui est ancrée dans les besoins locaux et locaux. Et il semblerait quand même qu'aujourd'hui, on s'intéresse vraiment de plus en plus à la collaboration avec des dirigeants locaux comme vous, des responsables locaux comme vous, en tant qu'élément clé de ce processus de changement. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez définir un bon partenariat? Qu'est-ce qui définit un bon partenariat? Comment les personnes qui sont parmi nos auditeurs aujourd'hui peuvent-elles aborder leur travail avec des responsables, des dirigeants comme vous?
Oui, dans le cadre de la territorialisation des politiques publiques, la collaboration avec les collectivités territoriales constitue un élément clé d'appropriation et de pérennisation du partenariat. Un bon partenariat doit se reposer sur des objectifs clairs des parties prenantes. Il est nécessaire que les deux partenaires aient des objectifs en commun. Plus la vision des deux parties est commune, plus le partenariat est rentable et durable. Un partenariat doit être gagnant-gagnant et surtout en impliquant la population et les priorités des populations elles-mêmes. Les personnes désireuses collaborer avec nous doivent avant tout tenir des réunions d'échange et de partage des plans stratégiques des deux parties afin d'identifier les objectifs en commun et de définir les axes de collaboration. Parce qu'avec ces objectifs que nous avons avec le plan de développement communautaire, avec l'ensemble des actions menées au niveau des populations, le diagnostic vraiment des priorités des populations, tous ces domaines doivent être ensemble et menés par les populations et par le partenariat pour demain que chaque entité soit vraiment très satisfaite de ce partenariat. Donc, en gros, c'est un partenariat qui est vraiment très efficace. Et c'est pour, je pense que quand chacun a des objectifs, parce que parfois, on voit des partenariats où le partenaire vient, il ne connaît pas les priorités des populations, et là, ou bien de la collectivité, et parfois ils vous donnent des investissements, des gros investissements qui ne sont pas prioritaires chez eux. Mais avec vraiment l'élaboration de plans stratégiques, l'échange des objectifs et des visions, ça va permettre ensemble, parce qu'ils ont ensemble les mêmes priorités, les mêmes objectifs, et comme ça, ils pourront atteindre les résultats escomptés et ça pourra vraiment nous faciliter le travail.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que vous voulez nous donner un exemple d'un partenariat réussi à Medina Yoro-Fula chez vous, dans l'esprit de ce que vous venez de décrire? Est-ce que vous avez un exemple?
Oui, nous avons un partenariat qui a réussi dans le cadre, par exemple, du conseil municipal des enfants. On a un partenariat avec Tostan et avec le conseil municipal des enfants qui a abouti aujourd'hui à un réseau des jeunes au niveau du département de Médina Yoro-Fula. C'était une tâche d'huile. Nous avions la volonté d'aller de l'avant et de mener des actions. Et aujourd'hui, grâce à ce partenariat, la commune de Médina Yoro-Fula a une vision claire. Nous avons élaboré notre plan d'action, notre plan de développement communautaire en fonction de la protection de l'enfant, en fonction de l'éducation, la santé, l'environnement et la promotion aussi de l'économie au niveau communautaire. Nous avons vu que la nécessité aujourd'hui de travailler ensemble, parce que Médina Yoro-Fula aujourd'hui prend en charge tout ce qui est protection. Et c'est pourquoi Médina Yoro-Fula aujourd'hui travaille dans le cadre de la petite enfance. Tout ça entre dans les recommandations des conseils municipaux des enfants. Et nous avons pu mener des actions qui ont permis à ces conseils municipaux-là d'être maintenant reconnus au niveau national, parce qu'ils sont invités à chaque fois au niveau national pour sont donnés d'exemples pour mener des activités. Donc cela veut dire qu'avec ces jeunes-là, des enfants qui déroulent leur plan d'action, qui sont financés par la mairie, qui ont trouvé d'autres partenaires et qui aujourd'hui qui sont devenus un exemple au niveau du département. Ils ont trouvé des financements qui leur ont permis d'aller au niveau des 11 collectivités territoriales, de sensibiliser et d'enrôler d'autres jeunes. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons 220 jeunes volontaires pour la protection de l'enfant, pour la promotion économique et sociale au niveau du département. Donc, cela veut dire que ça, c'est un partenariat qui a gagné. L'autre aspect aussi, dans le cadre de la transparence, c'est la reddition des comptes. Aujourd'hui, Médina Yoro-Fula a été primé en 2 reprises commune vraiment leader dans le cadre de la transparence et la reddition des comptes. Cela veut dire que, avec bien sûr le programme qui a été vraiment dispensé au niveau de Médina Yoro-Fula, a fait une tâche d'huile, et au niveau national, nous avons été la première collectivité territoriale leader vraiment qui a pris le prix de leadership local dans le cadre de la transparence et la réduction des comptes. Ça, c'est un acquis. L'autre aspect, dans le cadre de la participation citoyenne, avec le conseil municipal des enfants, les jeunes volontaires, avec vraiment les groupements de femmes et autres, nous avons aussi gagné le certificat de la certification citoyenne de Médina Yoro-Fula. Là aussi, c'est dans le cadre de la transparence, de la bonne gouvernance. Cela veut dire que vraiment, avec ce programme qui a permis à la commune de travailler dans la transparence, ça a permis de gagner des prix, et ces prix-là aussi ont favorisé, bien sûr, vraiment la crédibilité au niveau de la commune, parce que tous les partenaires pensent que vraiment, s'il faut accompagner, il faut accompagner des collectivités territoriales dynamiques où il y a la participation citoyenne, où il y a la transparence, où il y a la reddition des comptes, où les aspirations des populations sont prises en compte.
Merci beaucoup, Khalid aussi, et merci surtout pour tout ce que vous faites, hein, et félicitations pour ces reconnaissances au niveau national. Hein. Tostan est bien sûr un partenaire très fier de la collectivité territoriale et de votre commune. Hein. Donc, une question en fait envers vos collègues maires. Hein. Si vous rencontrez aujourd'hui, si vous quelqu'un qui vient d'être élu maire, comment allez-vous lui dire d'aborder son travail? Sur quoi devrait-il ou devrait-elle se concentrer?
Un maire élu pour la première fois doit avant tout faire le diagnostic de la situation actuelle de sa commune afin de connaître les aspects positifs et les aspects à améliorer. Il doit consulter les documents administratifs et les populations pour collecter des informations. Il doit aussi consulter les populations avant de prendre des décisions pour avis. Il doit avoir une vision parce que quand on vient pour la première fois, on ne doit pas venir tout simplement et aller droit au but, travailler. Non, il faut avoir une vision. En déroulant les activités, il y avait des promesses de campagne, maintenant il y a une réalité, mais nous savons qu'il y a une vision d'abord pour les 5 ans à venir, durant le mandat, qu'est-ce que je dois faire? Et pour cela, il faudrait un travail en amont avec la population, avec les documents vraiment administratifs qu'on a trouvés, voir quels sont les partenaires qui étaient là. Et c'est en ce moment-là que vraiment ça va vous allez commencer à dérouler. Donc, il doit surtout se concentrer sur la gestion administrative de la mairie, par l'élaboration d'un plan de développement communautaire et faire l'évaluation de la gestion des partenariats, des ressources financières, logistiques et humaines. Parce que, comme Métini Rufula, avant, lorsque je suis venu, j'ai trouvé qu'il n'y avait pas assez de ressources, que les partenariats n'étaient pas vraiment bien ficelés et qu'il n'y avait pas de logistique, il n'y avait pas de ressources humaines. Donc, il fallait avoir une vision là où aller et comment y aller et quelles sont les ressources, quels sont les partenariats et quelles sont les priorités des populations et comment adresser tout cela à la population, en tout cas mettre en place un système qui pourra aider la commune à aller de l'avant. C'est pourquoi, pour réussir, il faudrait que la collectivité territoriale, en tout cas le maire, prenne en tout cas toutes les dispositions nécessaires pour travailler dans la transparence, dans l'inclusion, dans l'équité. Parce que quand on travaille avec la population, il faut comprendre qu'il y a surtout des personnes en situation d'handicap qui sont là. Et nous avons des personnes vulnérables. Nous avons les femmes qui ne participent pas le plus souvent dans les prises de décision, qui ne peuvent même pas faire des plaidoyers pour elles-mêmes. Nous avons les enfants qui ont des besoins, qui doivent demain relever le défi. Donc, tout cela, il faudrait que le maire identifie toutes ces parties-là prenantes du développement de la commune pour s'assurer que s'il y a développement, ce n'est pas seulement ceux qui étaient là, nantis, ce ne sont pas ces gens-là qu'on doit renforcer, mais notre base pour renforcer les capacités, pour accompagner, ce sera des personnes vulnérables, ce sera des personnes marginalisées, ce sera des personnes qui étaient là, qui avaient besoin de soutien et qui ne l'avaient pas. Donc, c'est de promouvoir, en tout cas, tout ce qui est activité de renforcement de capacité des élus et renforcement, parce que les élus le plus souvent aussi ne sont pas formés. Donc le plus souvent, c'est le maire seulement qui travaille. Donc pour avoir en tout cas cette activité, cette volonté d'aller de l'avant, il faut former l'ensemble, avoir un plan de formation qui pourra aider le renforcement des capacités des élus, renforcement des capacités des organisations communautaires, renforcer les capacités des délégués de quartier ou les chefs du village pour permettre d'avoir des équipes qui pourront faciliter mettre en place des commissions techniques qui paieront vraiment des commissions techniques qui auront des cahiers de charges leur permettant d'accompagner la mairie dans ces tâches. Parce que sinon, le maire seulement ne peut rien faire. Il faut l'accompagnement de tout le monde, les conseillers, les commissions, les groupements de femmes, les jeunes et les autres personnes marginalisées qui avaient le droit à la parole, qui avaient aussi leur mot à dire, leurs préoccupations et tout ça, il faut le prendre en compte. C'est en ce moment-là que vous allez réussir, c'est en ce moment-là que le nouveau maire sera vraiment au cœur des populations, parce que les populations se sentiront maintenant indépendantes et qui se sentiront être accompagnées par un nouveau leadership qui est là et quelqu'un qui se préoccupe, qui est vraiment préoccupé des populations.
Merci beaucoup encore aussi. Merci beaucoup. Je souhaite maintenant repasser la parole à notre collègue Ken. Merci encore pour votre intervention.
Merci beaucoup.
Fantastic. That was really wonderful. Thank you so much, Khalidou, for those insights. You know, just listening to you respond to Elena's questions, you know, phrases, terms, concepts like accompaniment, such an important idea of really walking alongside your partners, thinking about capacity building as something that is driven from local need and at the request of local people as opposed to imposed from outside. Transparency, which leads to accountability, which leads to building credibility, you know, all of which then reinforces confidence in the system among the public in ways that I think are critical to those long-term changes that we're working towards. And of course, you know, the engagement of you know, people who are often left out of these processes, women, young people, you know, that next generation, so important. And of course, the notion that mayors, you know, even though they're working at the local level, they can't do it alone either. They also in turn need to reach out, you know, into the community for that broader engagement to take on these challenges. So thank you, really, really fantastic insights. I'd love, if I can now, to turn to Mayor Justice and to maybe run through some of those very same questions, if you'd be so willing. And maybe we can start with, you know, that question about what you think are some of the most effective tools and approaches in supporting local priorities and aspirations.
Thank you. I was equally moved by the video. It was very interesting. I'll speak in Kinyarwanda and English. So actually, really the challenge has helped me understand what local leaders should do. I was elected in 2006. That time, Rwanda was just a young nation that had moved from highly centralized to highly decentralized. It was a challenge. This was less than 50 years of independence. Independence means being free, having water, having power in your hands, determining your destiny. So independence, that's what it meant. But you can imagine independence without water in your proximity, independence where women and the children have to fetch water before they can go to do the routine work. So my 2006 election was a challenge to me and the entire district. So I'm happy that Ken knows how Rwanda is organized. Out of 30 districts, I was one of those leaders that had the challenge to move from a poor country to prosperity. And then you can imagine the central role of water it's a challenge. You can't talk of prosperity without water and the sustainable sanitation. The good news about our country, we have systems that worked for our ancestors, but they died with the colonization, as maybe our brothers and sisters elsewhere in Africa. We had values like Imihigo. Imihigo, when you translate it to the modern concepts, it is a performance contract. When we when you borrowed that concept to what we are doing, we had to do assessment, like my friend, the mayor, tried to say how they assess the situation when they come to office. Our priorities, everything was a priority, but water was number one on the list of priorities. So having the national cake that is very small, divided among 30 districts, national commitment of having every district independent, and having legal tools in our hands to meant a lot of challenge. So it shouldn't be a lack or what. When partners were coming in, they found Rulindo with a ready paper to implement. So when we started, me or the Water for People, we didn't know how to overcome this challenge because it was so huge and nobody knew how we are going to manage. And the national agenda for Vision 2020 was too ambitious for a district like mine that was hardly 20% served with water. And when you are talking of Rulindo, it isn't like other districts you may think of elsewhere in India, South America, elsewhere. It's hilly. Water is in the valley. When people are on the top of the hill, water is in the valley, and the people stay on top of the hills. I think, Ken, you know how our hills, the settlement pattern is. It's very challenging. So having the critical mass of a district rallying behind this arrangement between the Water and for People was one step, very important step. But another step to convince the central government to support this agenda was also another challenge itself. It was the first, the Rwandan government accepted to accept a district plan, a district budget in the national budget, because Water for People was saying, we are committing 55%. 45% should come from either Rulindo or the national government. So me and my entire team, we had to prove that what we are talking about, my district and Water for People, was the good gospel truth, because frustrations had existed before this agenda was put before government. So government of Rwanda, it was like a trial. They accepted 35, and they said, we in our district, we and our people, we commit to 15. And the water is not like any other service. Water is very expensive. Water is not easy to put to give monetary terms. So I would say among the tools that we used was to win people's hearts from central, and then from the local, and then the commitment to set the ball rolling, and the first results that came out convinced all of us to the extent that everybody was waiting for Rulindo challenge to succeed, so that elsewhere could also learn from us and do the business of serving the Rwandans. And actually, this story is a story none of us thought was going to succeed, but it succeeded because I'm not guessing, I'm right. When I came to US to meet Water for People partners, we realized how Water for People is different from other NGOs that had the frustrated governments in Rwanda or elsewhere, where the strings attached undermined the agenda that people had. So that is how we began, and the tools that we used were so simple, but the outcome is down in the history of this nation, how people from a very difficult situation can move forward and have 100% to water coverage.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. You know, just listening to your response there, I wonder if you could maybe describe a little bit more some of the dynamics and the process around the partnership question. You know, you just said, you know, often partners come in from outside and they have strings attached, I think is what you said. What was different about working with Water for People, and you know, what kind of describes for you a positive partnership when you think about local ownership, local leadership, and that sort of thing?
Well, I talked about the performance contract being in place. For us on the side of the local government, the performance contract that was signed between me and the president on behalf of the district was big enough commitment to clean our house so that whatever came on our side was going to be useful to us. Number two, the business-friendly environment in the country from the central government was good enough, I think, to convince Rwanda Water for People to multiply its contribution so many folds that it had started with. Number three, when we saw Water for People, the CEO and the entire staff, they didn't keep us away from their supporters. So even supporters came following Water for People. So there was a total transparency that existed, and it drove us towards the success, the commitment. And within Rwanda, because you have councils at the district council, district council, sector council, city councils, having everyone on board, that was a turning point to believe that the agenda that was going to succeed. Number two, learning from other members, because as much as Water for People was for Rulindo challenge, there are also other partners in the district and elsewhere in the country. So all these partners, they are members of the Joint Action Development Forum of this country. So what worked elsewhere would improve what Water for People was doing for us and also. So the budgeting process of the country was also fine-tuned to support this agenda. Water for People was always there when our budget cycle was ending. Water for People was always there to pay on time those ones who supported construction. And when Water for People resources were almost coming to an end, the district budget was also always there. And the approval processes of the budgets was also significant in making sure that the ball was rolling at all times. Number two, the accountability. I can say one is very strict on value for money. As much as this one was coming from an international organization, then value for money does not stop. It is still continued on government resources, on Water for People, and also on the contributions citizens made towards the success of this one. Because ordinary citizens came to provide umuganda. Umuganda is a communal work that people do for their well-being. So all this, the accountability around that one was very consistent. And we had to nurture this one so that it doesn't fail. Because if it failed, it would set precedent that other projects are also going to suffer. Thanks. I'm very grateful to all partners, especially the accountability partners, the ombudsman, the auditor general. Our books we used to qualify. They qualified, and then the qualification of these audits gave us a voice. And so many meetings that we were invited by the Right Honorable Prime Minister. I used to be given time to talk and then give experience on how we tackle these challenges. And it is upon the successes around the world that made Rulindo celebrate to be #1 always on performance contract twice. And this is so important that right partners, when they are properly welcomed, they help people overcome the dangers to their lives. So this is how it was. And I'm happy that it has continued even 5 years after my departure to continue to success. And I'm told it is even roaring, the ball is roaring, and the success, I think, is assured.
That's great. Yeah, no, I mean, it's so interesting. And, you know, this notion of partners coming in and fitting into your plans, as opposed to coming in with their plans and trying to convince you to take them up. I mean, I just think if there's any lesson to be learned here, it's really that. I'm keeping a little bit of an eye on the clock and want to make sure we have time to really open it up for some discussion, because as Elena said, we want to make this a really participatory kind of session. And I'd rather not dominate the questions myself, but see if perhaps there are some questions that we have from the audience. And I'm just in tracking the chat a little bit. You know, there are a few things that have come up that perhaps we could ask. But before I do that, Elena, I just wanted to see if you had any kind of immediate reflections from your perspectives on this question of partnership and, you know, sort of valuing proximity in the way these mayors have described so eloquently.
I'll just comment on Mayor Justice, what he said, and what he didn't say actually was the credibility he has as a mayor and the informal and formal authority he has in Rwanda obviously played into the success of the Rulindo Challenge, because people were watching in the beginning, of course, you know, like, oh, this is crazy. Then, whoa, it's really working. And, oh, I wonder why it's working. And so I think that, you know, we try to support from behind and let, you know, in this case, the district and the mayor drive the progress of full coverage across the district and provide technical support, funding support, et cetera, training, lots of capacity building. But what's happened, of course, is that it was a success, but it's replicating now. So we've moved to the district next door. Gicumbi is even bigger, so, and then we'll finish that faster. We're also assisting in others, and I say together, not just Water for People, but as a team, we call it replication through collaboration, helping other government, other civil society entities use the model of getting access, but also sustainable services beyond operation and maintenance, setting the right rates, working on the policies. Tariff setting's been a concern in Rwanda about what is the right rate to pay for water, because it can't be a flat rate because there's different costs per different service area, and really educating the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Water and Sanitation Corporation, why it has, you know, why do we need a variation depending on what the cost is so we can continue the services. So just having that influence and credibility is so much stronger through a mayor than ourselves. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, that's a really important insight. Elena, any additional kind of reflection?
Yeah, Eleanor, thank you for saying that. I'm going to build on that, and something that you said, Ken, in your, you know, reflecting on what Khalid-Ussi shared is really that concept of the confidence of the system that comes exactly from the credibility, as Eleanor said, that the mayor is bringing in the commune, and everyone else is watching. And this is exactly what happened also at Medina Rafula, and the power of those prices, in particular for transparency, accountability, have been so powerful. And people are watching Kalidou, are watching resources coming to Medina Rafula. And I know that, you know, we are now training as well. You are replicating what we could, you know, do together with Kalidou C in Medina Rafula. And, you know, citizens are asking, we want a mayor like Kalidou C because we want resources coming to our commune the way it happened. It is possible. And I think that is exactly, you know, the effect that Mayor Kangwagye with the Rwanda challenge, the Rulindo Fari challenge played, that really it does bring confidence in the system. It does bring, you know, focus on what needs to be done for really change, effective change to happen. So I think that is exactly going the same direction as Eleanor. And allow me to say a few words in French for Kalidou C, if you don't mind. Kalidou, donc Mayor Kangwagye a un peu expliqué son parcours. Il est très similaire au vôtre. Et vraiment, je pense que sur ce qu'on réfléchissait tout de suite, c'était vraiment un peu la crédibilité donc, que le maire a gagné dans ce processus et le fait qu'il a pu devenir un exemple pour les autres. Et donc, Water for People, l'organisation qu'Eleonore dirige, est en train maintenant de répliquer la même histoire dans d'autres, comme nous à Tostan, avec vous, nous sommes en train de faire avec d'autres communes qui ont vu le succès et vraiment le bien-être qu'il y a aujourd'hui à Medina Rafula et qui veulent donc émuler cette situation. Mais l'important, c'est vraiment qu'il y a cette confiance dans le système qui s'établit, que la transparence, la redevabilité, vraiment l'engagement de la population, l'engagement citoyen sont au cœur de ce bien-être. Et donc, pour arriver à ce bien-être, il faut vraiment avoir ces ingrédients. Et donc, je pense que voilà, les deux situations sont très similaires. Et que vraiment ce que nous voyons, c'est que le changement est possible. Et quand les gens voient que ce changement est possible, ils sont motivés et ils veulent vraiment mettre en place des systèmes qui favorisent ces changements. Voilà, merci Ken, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, that's great. Thanks for the translation. You know, there are a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to try to pick up on a little bit that speak to maybe the challenges and the frustrations, right? Like these are great examples of when it works well, but what happens when you have a mayor that isn't so cooperative, or, you know, if it's working at the, you know, with a mayor at a district level, what happens when, you know, regional leaders or national leaders are maybe getting in the way? You know, Justice, you talked about the very positive dynamic working with the national government and the local and the district level government. That's not the case everywhere, right? So maybe you both could speak briefly to how do you address those challenges, and is it possible to take this approach in regions and districts where you don't have that kind of leadership?
Je vais traduire d'abord en français, Ken,
oui.
Comme ça Kalidou peut-être peut
Merci.
commencer. Kalidou, donc nous avons sans doute deux exemples de dynamique positive. Le cas, bien sûr, de Medina Rafula et de Rulindo sont des exemples positifs avec une leadership qui a su vraiment aller dans la bonne direction, disons. Mais qu'est-ce qui se passe? Quels sont les défis quand la leadership ne veut pas aller dans le sens de la population? Comment vous décrirez? Est-ce que vous pouvez nous expliquer un peu si vous avez eu donc des exemples de leadership où vraiment il n'y avait pas cet esprit, cette dynamique positive et donc cet esprit de collaboration, que ce soit à niveau local mais aussi au niveau régional et national. Quelles sont les dynamiques qui sont là et comment y faire face? Quelles sont les stratégies pour y faire face?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Merci à tout le monde. Merci aussi à mon collègue maire. Donc, vraiment, félicitations. Et on est très content de vous aussi, de ce que vous avez fait. Et aujourd'hui, dans le cadre de ce partenariat, en tout cas dans le cadre des collectivités territoriales, il y a des défis à relever dans certaines collectivités territoriales. Si je comprends bien votre question, c'est là où le leadership a des priorités, mais qu'il ne mène pas des activités. Et nous avons vu quelque part où il y a des collectivités territoriales, des mairies, qui sont fermés et quand même les gens ont besoin d'extrait de naissance, ils ne reçoivent pas. Donc, cela veut dire qu'il n'y a pas cette dynamique communautaire. Il y a parfois dans l'année que 2 réunions du conseil municipal. Une réunion pour élaborer le budget, une autre réunion pour, bien sûr, encore préparer le compte administratif et pratiquement c'est fini. Et les collectivités, les conseils municipaux ne connaissaient pas le rôle et les responsabilités. Ils ne connaissaient pas le rôle de la population et la population refusait même de payer la taxe municipale ni de payer l'impôt. Donc, cela veut dire que c'est des collectivités territoriales qui ont besoin d'accompagnement, en tout cas de notre leadership, parce qu'aujourd'hui, dans le département de Médine Yoro Fula, par exemple, l'ensemble des collectivités territoriales, lorsqu'ils ont appris que Médine Yoro Fula, le changement qui est là, ils ont compris qu'il fallait renforcer. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, avec Tostan, ils ont pu accompagner l'ensemble des autres collectivités qui étaient là dans la léthargie. Cela veut dire que hier seulement, j'étais dans une commune où j'ai partagé avec vraiment tous les partenaires, surtout les maires et l'ensemble des conseillers. Mais lorsqu'ils ont appris, ils ont dit, mais nous, on ne savait pas. On ne savait pas que nous, en tant que conseil municipal, on avait un rôle de responsabilité dans la commune. On pensait que tout était pour centrer sur le maire. Le maire aussi n'avait pas élu domicile, il n'était pas là. Et il allait à Kolda, dans la région, et chaque fois qu'il y a des activités, il revenait. Mais maintenant, ils se sont engagés. Ils sont engagés d'élaborer un budget participatif. Ils se sont engagés de bien gérer leurs ressources vraiment financières et d'assurer le suivi. Ils ne savaient pas qu'ils avaient le rôle d'élaborer, de mettre en œuvre et d'assurer le suivi ensemble du budget et faire l'évaluation. Donc ça, c'est une chose. Et l'autre aspect, il n'y avait pas de transparence. Pour eux, tout l'argent qui était là était dans la poche du maire et c'est le maire qui utilisait comme il se devait. La terre a été distribuée anarchiquement et que partout, les gens ne savaient pas comment vraiment qu'ils sont en train de dilapider, de gérer la terre. Donc, il y a des priorités de développement. Il n'y a pas accès au financement pour les femmes. Il n'y a pas donc un budget participatif. Les enfants et les femmes sont laissés en rade. Il n'y a pas de protection d'enfants. Il n'y a pas de mesures d'accompagnement pour l'éducation, pour la santé, pour l'environnement, pour les 9 compétences transférées. Donc, aujourd'hui, ils se sont engagés et ils ont voulu même, la semaine prochaine, d'organiser une autre rencontre pour inviter l'ensemble des chefs de village et les leaders des autres communes pour les expliquer davantage, parce que le maire était tellement content qu'il a compris qu'aujourd'hui, le développement doit être mené par la population elle-même. On ne doit pas s'attendre vraiment à d'autres, on doit mener les activités et maintenant, les partenariats, ce serait des partenariats gagnant-gagnant, comme je l'ai dit. Chacun doit s'y mettre et en ce moment-là, il y aura un partenariat au niveau communautaire entre le conseil municipal et la population et les associations de la jeunesse et les comités de gestion communautaire et les groupements de femmes et les associations pour les personnes en situation de handicap, pour les chefs de village, les chefs religieux et l'ensemble de la population doit mener des actions vraiment de développement et doit participer aux affaires de la collectivité. C'est en ce moment-là que nous arriverons à atteindre les résultats. Et en ce moment-là aussi que les gens vont comprendre que l'impôt que nous payons va aller dans l'investissement de nos pays, va aller dans la santé, va aller dans la protection, va aller dans la nutrition de nos enfants, va aller dans la jeunesse, sport et loisirs, va aller dans le cadre de nos actions prioritaires. C'est en ce moment-là, avec la participation de tout un chacun, ils priorisent ensemble, ils élaborent ensemble, ils mettent en œuvre ensemble, ils assurent le suivi ensemble, ils élaborent ensemble. Et en ce moment, ce ne sera pas l'affaire du maire, ce sera l'affaire de la collectivité territoriale. Et tout le monde se sentira responsable, tout le monde se sentira vraiment participant parce qu'ils ont contribué au bien-être de leur collectivité. Donc, chacun sera vraiment content et chacun pourra dire que ça, c'est le contribuable qui a mis dans. dans le cadre de l'assainissement, de la voirie, dans le cadre de l'eau, dans le cadre de l'électricité, dans le cadre de tout ce qui est voirie, tout cela, c'est la contribution de la population. Donc, c'est pourquoi, vraiment, nous avons vu cela et nous, je pense qu'on est en train, en tout cas, de booster, en tout cas, au niveau collectivité territoriale. Le département de Médina Yoro Foulah est en train maintenant de changer de paradigme parce qu'ils ont compris qu'aujourd'hui, une mairie doit être fonctionnelle. Ils doivent rendre service aux populations. Il y a des services prestés pour la population, pour les enfants, pour les femmes, pour les extraits de naissance. Mais aussi, on ne doit pas être là seulement pour le budget et seulement pour l'extrait de naissance. On doit être là pour rendre des services socio-économiques au niveau de la collectivité territoriale. C'est en ce moment-là que tout le monde saura que la mairie, maintenant une collectivité territoriale, doit être viable et vraiment émergente. Elle doit aussi compétitive, comme on l'a dit au Sénégal, porteur de développement. Donc ici, nous devons tirer, en tout cas, tout le monde dira que allons-y à Médina Yoro Foulah, par exemple, nous allons travailler, c'est sûr, nous allons atteindre les résultats parce que tout le monde va participer, parce qu'il y a la transparence, parce que chacun se sent concerné par l'activité et aussi le partenaire viendra juste accompagner, mais il ne viendra pas en tant qu'acteur principal, mais il viendra trouver des idées, des solutions et vraiment des visions qui pourront aider vraiment à la bonne marche de nos activités. Et c'est ça la réalité.
Merci
beaucoup. C'est à ce moment-là que nous arriverons à atteindre les résultats.
Merci, Khalidou. Ken, do you want me to say a few things, maybe a keywords, because I'm
not
some
themes out of that, yeah.
Exactly. I'm not an interpreter. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Khalidou. Thank you so much. I would say, what are the strategies to overcome those, challenging leadership that are not really bringing about the positive framework that we talked about in the two cases. I would say access to information and to capacity building for the councillors, so that the mayor is not the only voice, but there is, a system that is bringing so many other voices to the table, and those voices are going to ask for accountability. And I think that has really been stressed by what Khalidou said, and then really bringing that collective responsibility. Again, he made an example of a commune where he was really informing the council about their roles and responsibilities. They didn't know, and now that they know, they're already acting and organizing more meetings next week to inform other people, so that the citizen can also now ask for accountability. So again, I think it's circle back to that concept of the confidence of the system that is built within. And then I think he also said that people will understand now why it is important to pay taxes, because people refuse if they don't see anything happening. Now, those are the resources that are meant to be also going to important public intervention. And so he said, so bringing all those stakeholders to the table has that, of course, important effect to bring transparency and accountability, and then for a greater good. So
yeah. I think also, as I was listening, there's always going to be a subsection of leaders who just don't have any interest really in working in this way, and they're going to be very difficult to convince, and you're probably well off to not try to beat your head against the wall. But what Khalidou was describing is, there's a huge portion of leaders in the middle who I think actually just don't know, and they don't have a firm grasp on how do you approach it in this way, in an inclusive way, in a way that really engages community. And one of the things that we don't talk about quite as much, but is really important to emphasize, is the results when you work in this way are very profound and very impactful. And so, the results speak for themselves. And if you can help people understand the structures and process for this kind of engagement, this kind of accompaniment, it will convince those who want to get better results, but maybe just don't know how to approach it in this way. So Justice, turning to you a little bit, I think, of course, feel free to comment on any of these issues, but also maybe you could speak to another question that came up in the chat, which is really around How do you identify those issues that are the most important at the local level and communicate those to the stakeholders, either partner organizations or even frankly, beyond your district to national leaders and others? How do you source those important issues that you want to address?
Thank you. I wanted to thank my colleague for being articulate on this. It brings me back to local governance. So back to your question, it's also very interesting to communication. I wanted to remind the listeners that among the peoples we lead, they are educated and non-educated. So connecting the least educated people to the central government where policies and issues are being discussed so that your district is on the national agenda. It is also and it's a tool that you must develop as a leader who is elected to serve citizens. When you come to Rwanda, we have slogans. Among the slogans is being people-centered. So being people-centered is looking at the educated and uneducated, educated, the uneducated, and take them as if it is one body that has the same agenda, which agenda must be attended to the national government. Councils, sales sector, and even village councils are the best places they are the centers of gravity if you want to succeed. But for us, our unique challenge was the technical staff. Those ones who are paid to do the job that is technical. So the work of a politician is now to bring those ones on table so that they feel as if they're also part of this, who are ready to succeed with the entire population. For us, it wasn't hard because already the government had set a very good vision of 2020, which was properly communicated to all citizens. So ours was like filling the missing link. The missing link was educating the citizens, which my brother, the mayor, mentioned. So education is always important. Me, I had the marginal advantage on my side. I was the chairman of local organizations here. So borrowing a leaf from left and right, even outside the country, was helping us to communicate. And we did. We didn't succeed only in water, we succeeded everywhere where we touched. So if you have proper plans, if you put educating citizens to you as your priority, daily priority, and then opening your heart or whatever, even if you are not charismatic, but you have many people, the critical masses on the side of the job, then you succeed. And it has a multiplier effect, definitely, because when you succeed this way, it will also be tried elsewhere. That's why I said success in everywhere, ever and forever in water can also generate successes elsewhere so that we succeed soon.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered you well, but that's what we are.
Terrific. Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you very much. Eleanor, I wonder, just building a little bit on some of these questions, you mentioned working in other districts, and I'm curious, how do you as a partner organization thinking about this kind of approach to local leadership, how do you assess, whether a district is potentially a good place for you to work in or not? How do you make that decision?
Well, being rooted in technical work, and many of us engineers, including myself, of course, we have a whole matrix of
course,
we call it the new district entry risk review. And key in there is the political will, which typically comes from the mayor. That being said, we we also outlast mayors. Like we're still in Rolando and Mayor Justice is gone. So we have to be very diligent and intentional to sign a legal agreement with the district that goes beyond the political cycle. And so when mayors change, sometimes the next mayor, and we've definitely had this too, like water is just not their thing. They're not interested in what we do. But if we have an agreement that usually requires setting up a service authority, agreeing to have service providers, whether they're private contractors like in Rwanda or municipal employees, that we train them, that the water and sanitation office is established. The local government often gives land for a treatment plant or something of that sort if we need to have somewhere to put assets and infrastructure, that we will transfer the assets after they're built, et cetera, that there will be a charge for service, that we will work on setting up supply chain for spare parts. So this legal agreement is very key to our success. Sometimes if a new mayor comes in that's not keen and not really engaged, we can still work with the municipal water and sanitation office that was likely already set up and sort of wait out and continue our work best we can and try to instill that political will and convince the political elected officials that this is really good for the economic development of their municipality or their district. And then hope that someone comes along that's more interested, because that always helps.
Right.
So we learned that the hard way. When we would make a deal with a mayor, they would not get elected and we would go backwards. So we, of course, every year's new learning and plenty of failures, but that is what's been really working for us. And part of this new district entry, like in the case of Kichumbi is a great example. They watched what happened in Berlindo. They were totally interested, waiting, and these things, our programs take 10 years, right? Here we are in 2020. So we started in 2010. And really understanding, here's what you need to do, and here's our role. And you do need to co-finance. Very important that their skin in the game. And so when we transfer those assets, they feel that ownership. So it was easy for Kichumbi because like they knew the rules of engagement. And then when we signed the agreements, we were going much faster. Yeah. So often we go somewhere in proximity that they've been watching the progress over the past several years.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and Elena, you may have some reflections on that too, but I do think, often in the nonprofit sector, we think a lot about starting programs and then scaling them. And, what often gets overlooked in that model of growth is this kind of slow, careful, distributed work that you have to do with a wide range of stakeholders and not just fixating on a single person or leader as like the one solution to the problem. And that's an important lesson, I think, in this scale. You have to think about scale and growth a little bit differently than the kind of traditional business-oriented model of growth. So last question, because I do want to make sure we wrap up with enough time for you all to head out to the final session. But I'm just curious if any of you have any quick thoughts on, as we talk about the question of leadership. In particular, there was a note in the chat about women's leadership. And Khalidou mentioned that in his comments. And I'm just curious how you all think about actively promoting the role of women as leaders in the efforts that you all are undertaking.
I might maybe speak to this in the first place, because the first time that I visited Medina Rufula with and Khalidou called the municipal council, of course, there were a few women that were in particular vocal. And again, I think the way Khalidou runs the community, it's a little bit the way in which Tostan class is actually unfolds. And so the people in that system, in that safe space, little by little, and again, it's patient, it takes time, but they find their space, they found their way of leading. And so in that particular space, we have seen a Tostan really female leadership, blossom, I would say, because it has always been there. But once it is recognized by the peers, men and women, youth and children, then that leader, and in particular when it is a woman, that leader really goes the extra mile, takes it to the next level. And I know some of the most engaged municipal councillor at Medina Rafula women, as well as young leaders, young female leaders. And so I think, again, we need to, as practitioner, as a civil society organization, help build that in a conducive environment for those leaders that are there that want to engage and run for office and be on the front place, really to feel safe, to gain that self-confidence first, and then that community confidence that is allowing them to blossom and to really take it to the next level. So that has been our experience at Tostan.
Put myself on mute. Do you think Khalidou might want to reflect on that too? Do you want to pose a similar question about women's leadership to him and see if...
Khalidou, donc j'ai parlé un peu des leaders féminines, femmes qui sont dans votre conseil municipal, et j'en ai rencontré quelques-unes quand je suis venue à Medina Rafula pour la première fois. Donc la question de Ken, c'est vraiment le rôle de la leadership féminine dans cela, et comment cette leadership féminine peut insuffler davantage une dynamique positive dans la vie de la commune. Mais il faudra être bref parce qu'on a juste quelques minutes.
Oui, et les femmes leaders jouent un rôle important, surtout les femmes qui ont bénéficié du renforcement des capacités, qui savent maintenant défendre leurs préoccupations et leurs priorités, et de savoir comment promouvoir les droits des femmes. Et en plus de cela aussi, mener les actions de développement économique et social et contribuer bien sûr aux prises de décision au niveau territorial. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, avant, les femmes étaient marginalisées. Elles venaient dans les réunions, elles ne participaient pas dans les réunions, elles n'avaient aucune, en tout cas, décision à prendre. Mais aujourd'hui, elles deviennent vraiment très efficaces dans le cadre de la protection d'abord des femmes, et dans le cadre aussi de la promotion vraiment d'abandonner les violences basées sur le genre. En plus de cela, le conseil, dans le conseil, il y a un comité communal de protection de l'enfant. Et ces femmes-là, maintenant, tout ce qui est lié à la protection de la femme, la lutte contre la violence faite aux femmes, tout ce qui est promotion vraiment des droits de la femme et tout ce qui est économie, donc ces femmes-là mènent des activités économiques. Donc, cela veut dire quoi? Cela veut dire qu'aujourd'hui, il y a des femmes qui sont prêtes pour être mères à Medina Rafula. Il y a des femmes qui sont prêtes à être présidentes de commission ou être députées. Avant, moi, je les avais proposées même pour être première adjointe au maire, mais elles avaient refusé parce qu'elles avaient peur. Maintenant, elles ont la confiance. Elles nous disent, monsieur le maire, nous aussi, femmes, nous voulons être comme toi, être leader, être maire de Medina Rafula. Ou bien être député, ou bien être conseil municipal, conseil économique, social et environnemental. Donc, elles expulsent leurs femmes, surtout les autres femmes, et en même temps, elles ont dit, quelque part, monsieur le maire, nous maintenant, c'est nous-mêmes qui allons aller faire la collecte des impôts au niveau des villages, au niveau de la taxe municipale dans les marchés, pour que demain, nous ayons plus de ressources, afin que ces ressources-là reviennent aux femmes et aux associations des personnes générales.
Merci.
Voilà.
Thank you, Khalidou. So, Khalidou is saying really, the next mayor will be a woman. Women in Medina Rafula are at the table, but those who have had opportunities to be capacity built, those who have had the chance to have access to the information that is allowing them to really advocate for the rights of women, to be at the center of the protection agenda, both for women, for children, and really being the engine of, the abandonment of gender-based violence and all those practices that are of course, rooted in social norms, gender-related social norms, and by not knowing, of course, the rights of people. So he feels that, you know, again, that process took time, but now people that were not, women that were not confident, that he had suggested to be in the front space, but they were not ready for it. Now they are, and now they are even going all the way and collecting themselves resources for doing, you know, again, greater things, for greater achievement. And thank you, Khalidou. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Jarama.
Jarama. Merci.
Well, thank you to everybody here today on this panel. What an extraordinary group, and such a privilege to be able to here with you all today. Thank you to those of you who joined us here online from wherever you are in the world. This is such an important topic, and I hope one that we'll continue to talk about in these forums moving forward. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll look forward to staying in the work together.
On behalf of Water for People and Tostan, thank you all, and thank you, Ken, for such a great facilitation. Mayors, you know, we are in your hands. Please take it forward. We look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Merci à tous. Merci à tous et à toutes.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
À bientôt. Merci.
Merci.